Have you ever looked back at a relationship and wondered when it quietly shifted from mutual care to you carrying most of the weight? Here's a truth that doesn't get said enough. If you felt emotionally or financially used as you've gotten older, it's not because you became weaker. It's often because you became more stable, more generous, and more capable. And not everyone who comes into your life knows how to meet that with integrity. What I want to do here is walk you through 4 patterns that explain why this happens to so many men later in life. Not to make you cynical, not to blame anyone, but to help you see the dynamics clearly so you can protect your time, your energy, and your resources without closing your heart. If this topic resonates with you at all, comment yes. If it doesn't, comment no. I read every comment, and it helps me understand who I'm speaking to. And if you find this conversation useful, a like or a subscription simply helps this reach other men who don't hear this kind of grounded honesty very often. No pressure, just support if it feels right. The first pattern is this. As men age, their value becomes quieter but broader. You're not trying to prove yourself anymore. You've built something. You're steady. You show up. That steadiness can attract people who are looking for relief, not partnership. A common scenario looks like this. She shares her stress, her past disappointments, her financial worries. You listen. You help. You stabilize things. At first it feels like connection, but over time the flow doesn't reverse. Your needs stay mostly unasked about. Your stress is acknowledged briefly, then moved past. And somehow, your role becomes emotional ground rather than equal participant. This isn't rare. Pew Research has consistently shown that emotional reliability becomes more desirable with age, especially in long-term relationships. At the same time, relationship researchers have noted that when one partner is seen as the stable one, they're often leaned on disproportionately. Most men don't notice it at first because it doesn't feel like exploitation. It feels like being needed. And for men who've learned to equate value with usefulness, that can feel familiar, even comforting. If this already makes sense to you, comment 1. The second pattern is financial generosity being mistaken for obligation. By midlife, many men have more resources than they did in their 20s or 30s. Not endless wealth, just margin, a bit of breathing room. And generosity, when it's healthy, is a beautiful thing. But here's where the shift happens. You offer help once, then again. Then it's expected. Maybe it's covering trips, helping with bills, fixing problems that aren't really yours. And if you hesitate, the mood changes. Disappointment creeps in. You feel subtly selfish for even pausing. Financial therapists and relationship counselors have talked openly about this pattern, and you'll see it echoed across men's stories on Reddit and YouTube comment sections. Older men describing how support slowly turned into silent pressure. This isn't about gold-digging stereotypes. Most of the time, the other person doesn't consciously think, "I'm using him." They think, "This is just how it works." And that's the danger. When generosity replaces mutual effort, resentment grows quietly. If you're finding value so far, let me know in the comments. It helps me understand what resonates. We'll keep going next with the remaining patterns, including why emotional boundaries often get softer with age, and how to recognize the difference between appreciation and dependence before it costs you more than money. The third pattern is emotional access without emotional responsibility. As you get older, you often become easier to talk to. You've lived more. You've failed, adjusted, learned restraint. You don't rush to fix everything. That makes you feel safe to be around. So people open up to you. They unload. They process their confusion, their anger, their regrets, and you hold that space calmly. Here's where it can tilt. You become the place where emotions go, but not the place where emotional care returns. A familiar situation looks like this. She calls when she's overwhelmed, when something goes wrong, when she needs grounding. But when you're quiet, tired, or uncertain, there's less curiosity, less follow-up. sometimes even impatience. This dynamic shows up a lot in relationship research around emotional labor. Psychologists writing for the American Psychological Association have pointed out that people who appear emotionally regulated are often assumed to need less support, even when they don't. And if you've spent years being the reliable one, you may not even realize you've stopped asking. This is more common than you think. Men in their 40s, 50s, and 60s talk about this constantly in long-form interviews and comment threads. Not feeling mistreated exactly, just unseen. Quick check-in. Does this match what you've noticed in your own life? Comment yes or not really. The fourth pattern is the quiet fear of starting over. This one is subtle, and it's important to handle gently. As time passes, the cost of change feels higher. Not because you can't adapt, but because you're more aware of what rebuilding takes. So when something feels slightly off in a relationship, it's easier to rationalize it. To say, this is fine. I can handle it. It's not worth the disruption. Relationship researchers at Harvard have talked about this in later life studies. They found that people often tolerate imbalance longer as they age, not out of weakness, but out of a desire for stability and peace. That makes sense. But it also means someone else's comfort can slowly be prioritized over your fulfillment. You may notice yourself minimizing your own discomfort, or telling yourself you're lucky to have companionship at all. And over time, that quiet self-abandonment adds up. If you're still with me, comment 1 again. It tells me you're tracking this with me. Now let's pull this together. None of these patterns mean you've failed. They mean you've grown into someone with depth, steadiness, and resources. The work now isn't to harden yourself. It's to recalibrate, to notice whether care flows both ways, whether generosity is met with respect, whether emotional closeness includes curiosity about you, not just access to you. This stage of life isn't about proving your worth. It's about protecting it quietly. And if any part of this stirred recognition, I'd like to hear from you. What's one thing you've learned about yourself with age? Something you didn't know at 30? Share it in the comments. I read them all. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this conversation felt steady and honest, consider subscribing so we can keep talking like this. And leave a comment if you're willing. This is how the conversation continues. I'll see you in the next one.